Herzlich willkommen zur Beloved Children Conference. Ich freue mich sehr, heute das Gespräch mit Ed Rubenstein führen zu dürfen, den ich bei Open Heart kennenlernen durfte und den ich sehr, sehr schätze. Ed bringt Erfahrungen als Psychologe mit, seit über 50 Jahren, aber eben auch Erfahrungen in seinem spirituellen Weg, über den ich auch heute mit ihm sprechen möchte, weil der wirklich ganz, ganz interessante Erfahrungen mit sich bringt. Dear Ed, I was just introducing you. Thank you so very much that you agree for this wonderful interview, and a warm welcome to our talk.
Well, thank you, Katerina, for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here. I look forward to sharing with your audience.
Yes, so why I wanted to ask you to contribute to the conference is because you have such a wide range of experience, and I guess that your life allowed you to have so much experience. Maybe you want to start a little bit from scratch, why everything led to where you are now, being a psychologist, being a wonderful open heart teacher, and but having had a lot of spiritual path experiences.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you how my journey got started. So in college, I had this mission statement, and the mission statement was, and I was born in 1953, so when I was in college, it was in the early 70s, like 1971. And my mission statement was how to party as much as you can without flunking out of college. And I was doing great, fulfilling my mission statement. And after a couple of years, because I thought that was the purpose of life, I was in a Volkswagen Bug and I got into a really bad accident and got catapulted out of my body. And I saw everything that ever happened to me, like a video. I ended up in the hospital with some surgeries, and I got out of the hospital, and all of a sudden my mission statement didn't make sense anymore. And it was like, for the first time in my life, you know, I began to ask, you know, who am I? You know, why do I exist? And what's the purpose of it all? And I began to look at my life and feel I was leading a very limited perception of reality. So my spiritual journey began, and as soon as I graduated college, I ended up spending 3 years living in Nepal and India, where I began studying meditation more deeply. But at that time, and I actually continued, so I landed in India and Nepal, days go back to 1975. And from 1975 to around 2000, my approach, and even as a psychologist, everything I taught was what I call mind-based. It was a mind-based approach. And then I shifted around 2000 to what I refer to as a heart-based approach.
What is the difference?
Well, that's really interesting. What is the difference? So in the mind-based approach, the essence is that I am in charge of becoming a more perfect being by my due diligence and by my ability to calm and quiet the monkey mind that likes to jump from branch to branch, and me in charge of mastering my habits. So The heart-based approach is very different because rather than the mind being the CEO, the executive, the heart is the executive in its connection to a larger reality that I refer to as true source, the source of unconditional love, the source of who we are. And then the mind works in alliance with the heart. So the wisdom of the heart changes our reality in such a way that the mind becomes a very good friend following the wisdom of the heart.
Yeah, that's very true. And if I just remember that, because you just mentioned that you've been on your spiritual path, so many spiritual practices teach us how to complete the mind, how to master the mind. But what happened that you suddenly shifted from one to the other? Because if you are about to master the mind, what must happen that you suddenly realize that there must be something else?
That's really interesting, Katerina. First, I want to be respectful of mind-based approaches because there is value. Okay, there is definitely therapeutic value in a mind-based approach. And I taught that, I got back from Nepal and India, and during my time there, I felt very fortunate to have many beautiful experiences and opportunities to really be away from it all and, do 7-8 hours of meditation a day for extended periods and learn to quiet the monkey mind that likes to jump and really find stillness in the space between thought. And I thought that was the doorway to completion. And when I got back and I got my PhD and I taught at the university and in rehab hospitals and community settings, and I was teaching people about mindfulness and other modalities, and including some Taoist Qigong and other modalities to be more centered and grounded and to still and quiet the mind. I came to a point when I felt there was a missing ingredient. There was just something that was not complete. And I came to realize that that missing ingredient is the heart. And actually, when I say heart, I'm referring to the non-physical heart, or the spiritual heart. Someone, may say, how do you know that you have this non-physical heart? And I would say, how do you know you even have a mind? Because you could find your physical heart, you can find your physical brain under an MRI, but you cannot find your mind under an MRI. And likewise, you cannot find your spiritual heart. But the spiritual heart is very, very real. And when the spiritual heart opens, it can even feel more real than the experience of the mind. So something I just want to share about that missing ingredient. We've known through time, we hear, follow your heart, listen to your heart. When you know something, do you know it in the core of your brain? Or do you know it in the core of your heart? So throughout history, we have known the importance of the heart, but it's very difficult to experience the heart from the mind. The heart is to be experienced at the level of the heart. And when we're touched, when we have the most beautiful, meaningful experiences in our life, if you reflect back, whatever it may be, a birth of a child, something special, when you felt so moved, you felt so touched, where were you moved? Where were you touched? Were you touched here? Oh, you touched here. Okay, so this is the doorway to where we are the most deeply touched, the most deeply moved. That gives us meaning and connection. And it's so special because from my perspective, this is the doorway to our true self, to our spark, to our spirit, whatever terminology you like, and for our true self's connection to the source of unconditional love and the source of who we really are.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea why we have forgotten that?
Well, that's interesting. You know, it's a really long story, and I'm not going to give my deeper understanding of that because I don't feel this is the appropriate place to do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
But let me say that it's easy to forget, and it's easy to become very preoccupied with our ego because this is the center of our ego. And it's very easy to lose perspective because we've been indoctrinated in our society to be a brain, to be a head, to value this. Nobody teaches us about this. Even in school, you know, you start off in school and everything is about the education of the brain. It's not about understanding the education of how to open our heart,
Mm-hmm.
how to experience a deeper connection through the doorway of our heart. So it hasn't been emphasized in our life, but now is the time, especially with children, to educate them about the importance of the heart and how to live a heart-centered life, because that's the only way that we can truly be fulfilled. And just one other thing about that. If we talk about fulfillment, we're talking also about contentment, about happiness. Can someone be happy and ungrateful at the same time? My feeling is if you're ungrateful, you're not happy. And where is the core of gratefulness come from? It's here. It's not a coincidence that we say heartfelt gratitude. We don't say, I have such brain-felt gratitude. It's always heartfelt. So I feel very strongly that now is the time for our heart and mind to come into sync, and for children to really begin at a young age to be educated about the importance of the heart, how to connect to the heart, and enjoy all the benefits of leading a heart-centered life.
Does that already exist in the US?
You know, I feel there are many people that are opening to the realization that our heart is the key to who we really are and to our deepest fulfillment. So, you know, parents and I'm sure certain school teachers in certain places are already incorporating that with our children. But I feel it's just at the beginning of a new awakening that our heart is the key.
Yeah, and of course it needs people who already are in their heart so that they can guide and teach the children how to stay in their heart. It's so important to see the child as the way it is and not the way it should function, in a way, you know?
Yes.
And this is what only if you as an adult person are able to see people completely, you can have a different approach. So it's always first us adults, and then we can help and guide the children.
I agree.
But I heard you saying as well that you can heal any wound that you have had, that you have experienced in your life. You don't have to get stuck in your trauma and your wounds, because when you go into this healing through your heart, you can heal everything. Is that correct?
That's
not
my
me.
feeling. My feeling is, and I've done a lot of trauma work, you know, for many years. My feeling is that our heart's connection to the source of unconditional love, the source of our true self, is the greatest healer. You know, now on a physiological level, a way that this can be understood is that the center of our brain, the amygdala, which is the center for emotional memory, it's holding all the collective memories of our trauma, of places that have impacted us in not nice ways. And those places get re-stimulated and they express, often even like without our permission, they just get re-stimulated and they come out in our emotional reactivity. And what's interesting about that is that, you know, because I taught cognitive-based approaches and, you know, cognitive behavioral therapies for many years, is that the frontal lobes do not have a direct wiring to this amygdala. So very often we attempt to use logic to combat our emotional reactivity, but it doesn't work. Logic just doesn't work. So what ends up happening is, you know, the amygdala gets reactivated and it's hurt and it feels violated and it's screaming, you know, how dare you do that to me? And then the cognitive behavioral approach, or using logic, you say, it's okay, let it go. And the amygdala keeps screaming like hell, I'm going to let it go. They don't deserve my forgiveness. But what's interesting is that actually the physical heart has a direct wired connection to the amygdala. So when you really are centered in your heart and you say, let it go, you hear it, you get it on a much deeper level. And the amygdala can stop screaming and say, yes. So there's so many therapeutic benefits from leading a heart-centered life and learning to really be grounded in the experience of the heart. So through that connection to our heart, I feel there is a way also to access our heart's connection to unconditional love, to heal our deepest wounds, to help us to forgive in ways that we may not have been able to forgive previously.
Yeah. And we feel so complete. So now I don't know the English word. In German, it is geboren, when you hold a baby and it is just cuddling into your arms. And
yes.
I don't know the English expression. Very interesting. It's geborgen, so as it's in as we spread it out in Germany, the people will understand.
I hear you. You know, it's there is this. I refer to it as an innate longing.
Yes.
In every human being.
Yes.
There is this innate longing to feel profoundly safe.
Yes.
And unconditionally loved,
yes.
like you're describing. When I just got back spending some time with my 4-month-old grandbaby, and you can see when he is feeling profoundly safe and unconditionally loved and just melting in my arms or in the caregiver's arms. And in that experience, in a sense, it's a microcosm of what we are all seeking on a macrocosmic level.
Yes.
And on that macrocosmic level, it's about who we really are through the doorway of our heart, that deepest part of us, in its connection with the true source of unconditional love, the source of who we are, that we feel profoundly safe, unconditionally loved, not as a concept, not as a mental construct, but as a living experience reality.
Thank you so much, Ed. What I would like to know is, do you also work with young people and teenagers? Because I think that especially in the past 2 years, but also before already, I think that many, especially young people, have been going through a very challenging period of time, and are still in a challenging period of time. And it is, in general, a challenging period of time, especially the time of being a teenager, because you're on the way to search of who you are. I remember very well when I was a teenager, in a way, I felt completely lost. Would the open heart also be a good approach for young people? And what would you recommend? Is there any experience that you have that you could share with us?
Sure. So first, I have in my career, I'm now moving into retirement phase as a psychotherapist and psychologist, but I have worked with people from all walks of life, and I have been very concerned about young people. You know, from the number of young people on antidepressants, and the number of young people who are feeling suicidal, the amount of addiction that's out there. And my feeling is that it goes back to what I was saying a little while ago, in that our young people have been educated about being a brain.
Yes.
You know, how to be a brain. What do you learn at school? You know, very often it's how to regurgitate material and give it back in a form that they can earn a good grade. But in terms of emotional balance, about emotional health, there is no education on how to do that. And I feel the key, again, is about being heart-centered and learning how to have the heart and mind work together as a team. So going back, when we're not heart-centered, it's very easy for the ego to become very dominant and to begin, you know, as a child, as a youth, to feel I am the center of the universe. You know, it's, you know, life revolves around me, and I'm what matters, and my needs, and how do I get what I want? And I want what I want when I want it. So the question is, at a young age, how to begin to support young people to get out of that egotistical, self-centered framework. And I feel the heart is the key. Okay? So as I was saying before, gratitude. So what to do? I was just talking to a parent recently, and I was sharing with them the benefit of the parent doing a gratitude journal, the child doing a gratitude journal, sharing the gratitude journals with each other, and doing it in a way that it's not just a mental experience. Like, you know, if you look at the literature, gratitude is seen as being, maybe you could say the biggest predictor of positive well-being. If you're not grateful, you're not going to have well-being. And when we talk about the research that's been done with gratitude, very often it's around think about what makes you grateful and write it down in your journal. And even just doing that is therapeutic. But as I was saying before, gratitude is not a thinking. It's not a thought. Gratitude is a feeling. It's a heartfelt feeling and a heartfelt experience. So children at a young age can begin to learn very easily, very naturally, how to begin to feel the beauty of the heart, the peace, the calm, the connection to a larger reality, whatever terminology you like to call that. And if someone says, well, how do you do that? And I said, well, I started even when my two sons were, 5 years old. I would be saying to them, say, look, Sage and Arun, I'm your big dad, I'm your little daddy, and mommy is your little mommy, but you have a big mommy, you have a big daddy. We're just your little mommy daddy, but you have a big mommy, a big daddy. And just introduce them to the concept of a larger reality, that we're connected to something beyond us, and that connection through the doorway of the heart is unconditional love. Now, I would like to say something, because sometimes someone will say, well, how do you know that this larger reality, this source, why are you calling it love? Isn't it just energy? Isn't it just this quantum field? And I say, I get it. Okay. When I was here, I was able to relate as a quantum field. But my question to you is, if you watch a mom bonding with their child, or a dad bonding with their child, do you look at that bonding experience that they're having and you say, Mom, Dad, you have such good energy with your child? They look at you like you're crazy. What are you talking about? Good energy. This isn't energy. This is love. This is unconditional love. So in our connection to this larger reality, whatever terminology you like for true source, the source of love, the source of our spirit, our true self, through that connection, when the heart starts to open through that connection, because I don't believe we open our heart. I feel, by feeling that connection, it's actually our saying, yes, I'm a willing participant for the heart to open, that the heart opens through that connection. And as the heart opens through that connection, it becomes apparent. This isn't an energetic connection. This is about profound love, about a complete love for every being everywhere in the whole existence. That's never about judgment. So it's really important that children begin the path of the heart at a young age, and it's easy to do. And they can learn how to smile from their heart, how to share that blessings from that connection as it radiates. And even at a young age, they can begin to feel that they're being an instrument for the good, for a higher good. And I feel that's the key to overcoming, addiction and some of the other problems we're having. Because what is addiction? From my perspective, addiction is really looking for your heart in the wrong place. It's looking for fulfillment, and it's just a misdirected attempt to find fulfillment. So for me, heart is crucial in our spiritual fulfillment, in our emotional, physical, mental well-being. It's all about the doorway to our heart.
Thank you so much.
It's a joy. So
Mm-hmm.
thanks for having me here.
May I just ask you, because you refer to the young children, and I am completely with you, because it is the younger you start helping the children to understand the bigger picture, the easier it is, because they understand in a natural way when they're young. But what do you do with teenagers? Because they are already in that state. It's all about me. It's all about my world. And I want to fulfill. I have so many friends around me who have issues with their teenage children. And although as a society, I think we have gone to the point where we say it's natural, I don't think it is natural. I know that it can be different. It's not natural. We just have accepted that it's natural. But I'm 100% convinced that if we find another approach, which we already discussed from young age onwards, it can be changed. But what can we do, maybe also as older people, to help teenagers to find their way?
It's really interesting question, and it's not an easy subject.
Yeah, I know.
And you know, in my experience, the youth, you know, and the influence of social media, that there's so many challenges, because once you get locked into a certain limited paradigm, it's not easy to shift from that paradigm. There needs to be a motivating factor to get you to change direction. And sometimes it has to be pain, you know, to wake up. It could be, you know, I had a young person who made a spiritual shift and is really doing wonderfully, but it took for them to get to a point that a friend of theirs overdosed and died. And that helped them to really do some soul searching. Okay. But if I can go back a little before that, when I look at my own life, I didn't have a bonding experience with the adult community. So I grew up in the 60s, and my sphere of influence was my peer group. You know, so my initiations in life came on the streets in New York. It didn't come from meaningful experiences with adults. So in a sense, I never felt I was part of a tribe, you know, of adults that I was bonded in a meaningful way. You know, I went through a bar mitzvah that was a totally ritualistic, meaningless experience that did not help me to feel bonded to a larger reality or to the adult community. So as I said, my initiations in life came more in the streets in New York to my older peer group in an Irish and Italian neighborhood. So where I'm going with this is, I felt after I saw what my experience was, that when I had children, I was going to have a very different experience with them. So I began doing some what I call meaningful rites of passage, where I allowed my children to interact with myself and friends that were referred to as, these are your spiritual aunts and uncles. And we did a process in which they really felt more bonded to adults. And what I felt happened through that process, and they're both very successful. You know, they're doing great in the world. They're very spiritually grounded and centered, and contributing to society. But through that experience, they were less influenced, or not influenced at all, by negative peer pressure, you know, because they had this bond and they felt these adults are, you know, my connection to this world. And it helped so much. And what I feel with our young people is they don't have that experience. So I really encourage creating meaningful rites of passage that really bond our young people so they could feel I'm part of a tribe, you know, I'm in connection with this adult community, with these wisdom keepers, with these elders. And I feel that makes a huge difference. And many of our youth that are struggling because they never had that bond.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. Yeah, okay, lots to do. But when I listen to you, I can also hear that if you do not bond, we still can trust that life will lead everyone to one point where we start asking.
I mean, I wasn't bonded with the adult community, and life brought me to a place where spirituality became very important in my life. And I'm very hopeful that our young people and whatever struggles they're going through will find a way to use them as a wake-up call to connect to a higher reality.
Well, as you already said, it is the time, and it's the time that more and more, I hear from more and more young people that they follow their heart, and they really follow their heart. They are not ready to walk any path that is given from society, and in their young ages, they are courageous to step out and even sometimes to wait a little while until, of course, that sounds easy. It's not easy for them, but they just know that what they think is expected from them is not the time yet. And so they are in this mode where they try this and they try that, but they just realize that there is something else that they want to contribute. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, I'd like to add that when a young person really begins to connect with their heart and they begin to feel, in a sense, a conscience, a way, you know, for example, my joke is, if someone is really connected to their heart, they're coming from, do you need to be told the 10 Commandments? Do you need to be told don't kill? You know, your heart knows, you know. So once the heart connection is there and the heart opens, if you're engaging in a situation that is not the best, your heart will be squeezed. Your heart will say, that's not good. The heart will guide you.
Yeah.
And many young people are following their heart, listening to their heart, and they're ready to be our next generation of leaders.
Wonderful, Ed. Before we finish, I would love to know if there's anything that your heart tells you to share with the community, or if everything's said, is there anything that is important?
Yeah, for me, just one other thing, just to clarify, what I discovered is that when we're really heart-centered, our perception of reality changes. So we think different, the quality of our thought, the way we respond, everything is different when we're heart-centered compared to if the heart is closed, the mind is dominant. We see life in a totally different way. And basically what I'm sharing is that the opening of the heart is something that is so simple. It is so easy. It's not this complicated thing. And I encourage everyone to just take a little time and experiment, if this is something new for you, about how easy it is just when we're relaxed, so the brain, mind isn't dominant, that when we're able to just touch our heart, not the physical heart, but the heart in the center of the chest, and we just smile to our heart, just say yes to that connection, and begin to feel what's there. Whatever nice feeling, is feeling of peace and calm, just natural, heartfelt gratitude. Then we just begin to feel that feeling and keep smiling to the heart. And those beautiful feelings begin to radiate. And that's how easy it is to begin the journey of allowing our heart's connection to true source, the source of love, the source of who we are, to begin to open our hearts. So it's not about us in charge of becoming a perfect being, but it's about a relationship with love, a relationship with life. And through that connection, it's so easy, but it's literally a shift in operating systems. So if you've been doing kind of a mind-based approach, then you're running a certain operating system. And the operating system that I'm sharing is different. But once you acclimate to this operating system that I'm talking about, that instead of being me in charge of quieting my mind, but you're shifting into this understanding that we're in this relationship with this larger reality, true source, the source of love. And we just begin to feel it. That relationship grows and it opens our heart without borders and boundaries. And we begin to feel that we can share that love as an instrument to all beings everywhere. And life has a much deeper sense of meaning and fulfillment and purpose. That's all I wanted to share.
It's so true. And it is just that we are perfect beings. We don't have to become perfect. We are perfect. Ed, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
It's a heartfelt gratitude that I just feel that you took your time and shared your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Very, 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 very welcome.